his promises to the American people. According to new polling that was released at the beginning of this week by CBS News, an overwhelming 70% of Americans said that President Trump is following through on what he pledged to do during his historic campaign. The poll also revealed that Americans see President Trump as a tough, energetic, focused, and effective leader fighting hard to improve their lives and our country. I would like to address an extremely dishonest narrative that we've seen emerging over the past few days. Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House. I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law. And they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump. Quick news flash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts: 77 million Americans voted to elect this president. And each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. As the president clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law in the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump's policies can be enacted.
So it's just another Serverless Journal entry. We're doing Women Leading America's Intelligentsia. We're looking at some of the powerhouses in academia and journalism within the larger think tank apparatus of American society. We're looking at those contributors that are women who have the most to offer, who have the heaviest hitting track record of reporting on subjects no one else has the courage to discuss. So welcome back. Welcome back again to a wonderful, beautiful episode of our Elite Journalism, Women Leading America's Intelligentsia, right? And this has been such a huge episode. These episodes that we've done have been such a huge hit. People really love this. They love this discussion about the nature and the external formation and the evidence of America's greatness in this kind of like social milieu where we can kind of see here and observe the advancement within our social constructs, within our society of women, right, in this incredible way. And to try to contemplate in this colossal experiment, which has so many like innumerable factors that it's really hard to like ultimately and comprehensively explain how wonderful this is, but we experience it. We see it, we experience it firsthand, and we know it by its fruit, right? So we don't necessarily have to have like a scientific explanation for what's happening here, but we can see that in all of history, in all of human history, in as many thousands of years and millennia that may have been, there has never been a time in history or in the world, geographically or a place, where women have experienced a culture of security and intellectual advancement to such a degree that the society in promoting the protection of individual rights, including individual women, and especially individual women, right, being the kind of largest minority bloc in society. And within American democratic institutions, we protect the minority, right? The majority doesn't just get to overrun the minority and overrun their rights, right? The minority has protected rights, protected voice, protected speech. And so all that accumulates to the advancement and the empowerment of women over time, generationally, so that now we teach our women in schools to advance physically, to have martial skills, right? To have sports and athletic sportsmanship to a high level of physical advancement, right? So we want our women in America to be physical specimens, physical, going to the heart of what is ultimate fitness of body and mind, right? And so you can see that, and women are not just relegated to the parlors to quietly stitch, do their needlework and to, sew a quilt or something, right, in the background. No. So now we have women who are going to advance to the highest levels of human capacity. And in these different spaces and these different kind of specialized realm of professional career advancement, we're going to see in this triathlon of human ability who can really sell the most, who can really develop the most, who can really innovate the best, who can really advance and take the sciences and the medicine, who can take these pieces of the massive scientific and technological advancement of America to the next level. And we've come to this place of societal enlightenment where we recognize each other's strengths and powers, and there really is no weaker sex anymore, right? And of course we have the equalizer in the Colt 45, right? Just the press of the lever, the finger trigger of a handgun can equalize the power imbalance between a victim and a victimizer of any caliber, of any stripe, right? Any person, even a 10-year-old boy can overcome the largest aggressor with the Colt 45 equalizer, right? So the technology is a great equalizer in history. And so we have a different world, a different landscape of reality after all these innovations, all these technological advancements. We're not going to be able to really leave that behind. There's not going to be a world where we're just going to forget that we invented gunpowder and a handgun, right? Even if we have to have like a new serfdom, even if we go into a great fourth turning, a downturn of darkness, like a new medieval period, new dark ages, right? Even when into new dark ages, this idea of developing metal and shaping the metal to be weaponry, right? And the use of all this scientific development that we've advanced it's not something that's easily lost over time. So these changes and these evolutions within our lives are here to stay. And it's really just the backwards kind of Neanderthal, Bronze Age throwbacks and degenerates of the world who are still like clinging on to some backwards, primitive, medieval mindset where men are primary, right? Where men are the priests or the holy men, right? And if you don't listen to them, they chop your head or they burn you at the stake or something, right? You get what I mean. These primitive, medieval, throwback, degenerate cultures and religions and societies are holding us back. Are holding us back from advancing as a human species because it's retardation. And so it's this ultimate retardation of these huge blocks. We have these groups of billions of people in these different like religio-cultic idea virus blocks who threaten the rest of us with their madness, right? It doesn't matter even if you're like a degenerate, transgender, like mentally ill, like psychopath out there trying to like burn, like, scratching people's cars, burning down things, right? Like right? You're about ready to kill people soon. Like, if you could find a way to like sneak into like a Supreme Court justice's home and murder them, right? That's how deeply penetrated these people are by the psyop. I mean, they're not easily influenced. They're like uber influenced, right? They're waiting for their influence to come from the media every day to trigger them to the next level of insanity, right? That's what this is. So we're trying to maintain our sanity. We're trying to move forward as the human species and go to the next level. And we have these degenerates holding us back. And it's weird. You have these perverted, gender dysphoric psychos who are just like, they need to be in the DSM-4 manual. And we need to evaluate the mental fitness of these people. They're not healthy, right? We need a psychological evaluation done. Because these people are trying to cut parts of their body off so they can become like their mommies or what. It's ill. It's sick. And we're giving place to it in the classroom, in society, in CNN. We're actually giving mature, grown-up adult society is giving like a speaking platform to this mentally ill, disturbed fixation on my pee-pee or my jine, right? We're focused. We're like intensely focused at this point on our genitalia, right? That's mentally ill, guys. There's nothing more mentally ill than that. That is like the quintessential prognosis, right? So it's strange how all these mentally ill and disordered and degenerate cultural idea viruses are clinging together, like they're magnetizing together. So you have the Palestinian cause, right? Like which like somehow is like some kind of Muslim psyop of a Sharia supremacy. And I don't have an issue with people who are religious. There's people who have religious conviction all over the world, but it's the part where you've somehow allowed these violent murderer provocateurs into your midst in any group. I don't care if it's a Mormon group, which is very, very, very similar to Islam. I don't care what kind of group it is. When you start to have to act on God's behalf for Him to kill people for God, whatever you think that is, then you're sick, and we should shoot you first before you shoot us, right? We can't have people going into like black churches and shooting it up. Like, who are these people's therapists? Like, what is the medicine combination? Right down in Florida, was it UCF? You got the insane UCF student murdering people right on the street corner, shedding blood, cold blood for no reason other than that he's got to make his mark on the world. He's got to make his presence felt, and he's an empty, silent, weak, and pathetic, hollow soul. A soulless and formless little troll, right? And that's all he could accomplish with the life he's been given, is to murder some people because some people on CNN made it seem like it was real serious, right? These people are sick. They have no ability to think for themselves. These are the kind of individuals who will march Jews off into the camps because some strong man told them to, right? Right? That's what kind of people we have here. We have individuals who are the most sick, the most venal, and the most depraved in the world, like right here, and they're just victims. The victims of the poisonous mockingbird media culture, right? They're just driving out. It was being funded by USAID, right? Of course. Who knows what the new form of the bankrolling operation will be, right? These people are not done. They're not done trying to destroy our country. They'll go to any length, and I believe that. I think when these guys are talking about a city getting nuked, Washington D.C., the Capitol getting blown up, like I could see that happening. I could see it. I can see that we're going to have they got a couple of carrier groups over in the Middle East. I can see that we're going to have images on the news very soon, smoking ships. It's meant to be. It's definitely happening, guys. It's going down. Like the normalcy, us being allowed to stay within our little normalcy bias bubble, it's not going to happen. The American bubble is what we're talking about here, the America bubble. That's what this entire episode is going to be about today. In this America bubble, we have this very thin and pristine and fragile membrane of freedom and liberty, intellectual clarity, insanity, right? That just reigns across America from sea to shining sea. That's what this is all about. This is about straight, hardcore, logical sanity, and about how it is that people treat each other and how people ought to be taught, how people ought to be protected under the law. So here we are, we're in a state where all the forces and the degenerative forces of darkness in the world, all the throwback forces of human de-evolution and idolatry and degradation that brings humanity low. Humanity has always been brought low by this empty, insane cult of idolatry. And it takes one form or another, it takes on one shape or another, but it's always this kind of rabid, frenzy, insanity of worshiping some rock god, right? Or bowing 5 times a day to worship Allah Akbar, or whatever. It's always some kind of throwback, degenerative mental illness that keeps people from progressing. These are the kind of cultures that are going to develop female vaginal circumcision, right? Who thinks of that? Like, that literally got invented by Islam, right? Like, so Islam comes along and they want to bring the light of Allah to the world, and now we're chopping up women's vaginas. Like, and they don't have like a surgery unit either, right? They just got like a Flintstone and like a flat like tablet rock, and hold still. I can't have you having any female orgasms around here, right? This is Allah speaking. Right? So it's always a reversal. It's always a reversion. It's always an inversion into perversity, right? So we're not gonna take the man's grimy, sweaty wiener and circumcise it according to Jehovah in the biblical context, right? Where we're circumcising the men for cleanliness because that big old flab of the foreskin, right? The big old nasty foreskin gummed up with sweat and slime and smegma all up in there, right? How are women, especially women who are living like, I don't know, 2,500 years ago, ever going to survive with their gummed up smegma vagina all getting rammed with the foreskin in the way, right? The idea is to have cleanliness. The idea is to keep the birth canal clean so that you can have a lot of children and you can be fruitful and multiply. That's the idea. And the cleanliness of the woman and keeping her where she can live a little while and she's not getting racked by diseases because the man wants to plunge his wiener in the woman constantly, right? This is just the basics. I mean, do you guys know understanding of this? We don't circumcise the woman's vagina out so she can't have an orgasm. Like, we want her to enjoy having sex, or else, well, why would she even want to live if she's just there to pump out kids with the smegma wiener all day, right? No, we circumcise the men. That's why this is ultimately a war of circumcision. It's the uncircumcised heathens and pigs who are trying to overtake and destroy the circumcised. And that doesn't have to be in the flesh, but it is in the flesh. It's the circumcision of the heart spiritually, but it's also in the flesh too because it's cleaner. And the doctors do it in America to all the little boys, not so we can be Zionists, so we can be like the Jews. That's what the Jew haters will say. No, we do it because it's medically cleaner, and it's always been that way, even since it was an ordinance from Jehovah to keep the boys circumcised on the 8th day, like Yeshua. You know who that is? Anybody ever heard of him? So if he, as the Messiah, being a virgin and being clean his whole life, never being married, he was prepared to be married. He was prepared to be clean and have a clean wiener so he could have a marriage. His body was prepared to be married for a future spouse, which never came because he was murdered on the cross. Remember that? But he was circumcised like we are as men in the West, as Jews are. So I guess we're Zionists on that level, right? And if you're not physically circumcised in the flesh, it's not a sin. It's just a preference because it can be cleaner for the woman. But you have to be circumcised in your heart. You have to be saved in your heart. You have to cut off the part that is unclean in your heart now, right? That's the difference. It's a spiritual circumcision. That's what you're getting to be a part of here in America. That's what you're looking at. That's how we could arrive at this place of such a wonderful bounty of civilization and social achievement and societal innovation that's never been seen before. Women are this liberation of women has never been seen in thousands of years. And I can see these women, like, you got these men and fathers, they're teaching their wives how to clean the gun, how to shoot it, how to defend themselves, right? We have women in our military armed forces who are so lethal and dangerous and deadly, you got to keep them in a fucking lockbox, right? That's what this is really about. This is the liberation of the human species. Women have never been safe because they've had to be protectees against the invading, marauding forces from outside. It didn't matter if it was Attila the Hun or Genghis Khan, right? The women were never safe. They were just straight soft targets, carried away. You were in danger of loving a woman or trying to take care of a family because it could never survive if you couldn't protect your family, if you couldn't keep your family safe, if you couldn't get to a place where you could actually live. We've created a nation here. This is the greatest nation in the name of God that's ever been created. I look at these tablets of our Constitution and the writings of our Declaration of Independence and even the writings where they're exploring this whole concept and having these little debates within the Articles of Confederation when we're starting to confederate our actual federal government in this country. The Bill of Rights. I look at those documents as inspired additions and addendums to the Word of God. They were inspired by the Holy Spirit. They were written by men of God who died under great compulsion, under great pressure to liberate their children, to liberate their families, to create a world of liberty and freedom and independence that the scriptures and the Bible alluded to that no one had ever achieved before. And we, our forefathers in this country, we are inheriting what they have achieved. And that was a scriptural, biblical basis for the construction of a government that would protect the rights and the liberties of all against the monstrosities of religio-cultic monsters from overseas. It could protect individual rights to read their own Bible, to explore spirituality and the truth of God and Christ on their own, who could study freely, read books independently, and begin to have the accomplishment and the accumulation of great volumes of knowledge and science. And the advancement of technology and science could proceed because we were no longer restrained or pinned down or terrorized or psychologically abused, deeply in our culture by the world we were in, right? That's the kind of world you had in the Ottoman Empire, what kind of world you had in Europe, despite all their advances of the very, very rich. It was just slavery. And then the British tried to blame us for slavery, right? They still do it. They still do it through the United Nations. They try to act like the America invented slavery in 1619. No, the British brought the slaves over here in 1619 to their British colony. They weren't civilized. They weren't brave or culturally mature or able to read the Bible and hold themselves accountable. They were just a bunch of imperialistic pigs. And you can see that they have the consequences and the outcropping of the imperialistic pig culture. Got a bunch of cities, a bunch of buildings, a bunch of nothing, right? A bunch of degeneracy. Oh, come on, Islam, come over here and rape our culture to death. Oh, London, right? They got no backbone. They never did. America is the backbone. We're going to resist. We're going to maintain our culture. We're not going to have Sharia supremacy. We're going to have America supremacy, constitutional supremacy over the land. That's what this is about. But that's why I got to turn to Karoline Leavitt. She is undoubtedly going to have to take this particular slot here as the ultimate elite journalists.
Well, it was fascinating to me, Sean. I was actually scrolling on Instagram when I came across this interview, and it stopped me in my tracks, not just because they sat down with a member of a Mexican cartel that is now designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the United States government, but because of the nature of the questions of this notorious foreign terrorist. It was a softball interview giving a platform to a notorious drug cartel that has killed American citizens. I thought it was quite despicable. But again, this is just another reason why the trust in the legacy media is at an all-time low amongst the American public.
We cannot deny that her ability to be a journalist, and that she is the ultimate journalist, and she's the White House, the central White House journalist right now. She's the journalist press secretary in chief, right? And boy, is she a hard-hitting, powerful woman, right? This is what makes America proud. Like, you go to Israel, hey, I love Israel, and they're struggling to fight for their right to exist, and all the stuff they have there, but they don't have a biblically based, Protestant-inspired, constitutional government like we have here, boy. And they're not producing women of great caliber and intellectual giants, and the kind of courage that is behind these patriots is extraordinary. And only here in America could we be like, oh, it's just offensive that you're pointing out that she's a woman. But you have to understand that this is the only place in the world where women can even achieve this kind of greatness. You're not going to go find this staggering ability and power and personal integrity anywhere else in the world. Go look in Israel. Go look at the press secretary in Israel and go see if you can find a Karoline Leavitt. It's not there. Or Mark Levin. Mark Levin, he's not one of our women leading America's intelligentsia, but he's definitely in the intelligentsia leadership, right? And he's an example of an individual who, if he was just an Israeli citizen his whole life, wouldn't be who he is, wouldn't be a constitutional expert, right? And a scholar to the degree that he is, and you wouldn't hear him fulminating and breathing fire on his radio broadcast the way that we do. We hear the guy literally. He sounds like he should be sitting in the room with Thomas Jefferson, right? They're just breathing fire, reminding us all what a constitutionally based, free American society based on liberty and independence, and the idea that God made all of our lives, and our lives are precious, and they're not to be mistreated, and human life is the highest commodity, is the highest and most precious and priceless thing. Not the will of the king, or here comes the armada, or here comes the army, or the ships, right? Those are all irrelevant things compared to the desires and the directed will of the people, especially when it's crying out, especially when the will of the people is suffering, and they're trying to change their government so they don't have to suffer the bloody abuses of a tyrannical and mindless tyranny, of a monarchy, directed by this idea of the divine right of kings, which has always been spurred on by the papal declarations of Rome, right? The papal declarations of Rome were always pitting the kings that they've set on the thrones against the people to punish them, to burn them at the stake. The edict of Nantes has been revoked, so now you Huguenots have to scatter around the countryside and flee for your lives, right? That's been the divine right of kings, right? Oh, here's the Bartholomew Day massacre. Here comes the Queen Medici. Oh, here she comes. She's going to come out and review the massacre that she's left in the wake of her Jesuit advisors, right? To just massacre all the Protestants. Right? All the people who wouldn't come in and submit to their disgusting Eucharist and sun worship, astrotheology, right? Their error, their horrible idolatrous error. We won't submit to it, so they murder us, right? That's been the divine right of kings. That's been the purpose of it. That's why America was formed, to get away from those inquisition, right? And America was formed in God's eye, in the foresight of his heart of hearts, and of his looking forward in the future. He set us here. We are here now with God's direct intentionality in mind. He knew we would exist. He knew our parents and our grandparents would meet. He knew that we would be a future generation that would come out of all that he did in the scriptures, all the books that were written, all the prophets, all the law, all the New Testament, right? All that was produced and brought together so that this new era of American greatness would be formed. That we are a light to the world. We are a shining city on the hill. That's just biblical. Other people want to be like us. Other people want to find the secret of what we achieve. What did we achieve? We put together the biblical, scriptural, Protestant values of liberty and spiritual, religious liberty, personal liberty, freedom of speech. All those concepts or ideas that people had to be free to preach. They had to be free to preach the gospel, freedom of speech, right? That's all the way. Back in the day, you couldn't even speak out in these countries governed by the Jesuits or monarchs who were overruled by the papacy, because they would find you, they would come in the middle of the night, you had no rights to face your accuser, you had no rights to stand any kind of trial, right? They would just put you in a dungeon and they would murder you and they would burn you, right? That's what would happen to you. America was formed so that the Roman Catholic Inquisitions could never ever happen to people again. They were so barbarous, so butcherous, so bloody and murderous, and so vile. It was such a bloody disgrace to human history that it's evil. It's the most evil and wretched thing that's ever happened. And you go on to Google now, and these AIs are being trained to be like, oh, only 5,000 people died in the Inquisition. That's a lie. That's a lie. Millions and millions and millions of people died in those Inquisitions. In fact, the whole human race was stunted. That's what they call the Dark Ages, because people couldn't even reproduce next generations of kids. Right? They couldn't even have the peasants and the serfs. They weren't even able to have kids who could read and create another generation of success. Right? It was degeneracy and generational curses and mass psychological traumatization of the people. That's what it was. You couldn't go out and speak freely. You get burned. You had to be like a Martin Luther. He risked it all. He went to the Diet of Worms just to go in there and risk it all, because he thought he knew they were going to kill him. They tried to kill him several times. They tried to kidnap him that very week. They would have took Martin Luther and killed him but God protected him, because he was going to revolt. He was going to rebel. He wasn't going to take it. He wasn't going to sit there and go into perdition, into eternity, participating with these lies of Rome. And we're not going to either. So you know our views on that, but really we're here to talk about the unprecedented, unimaginable, incomprehensible greatness of what America's philosophical construct has achieved in our lives, in keeping the balance of the law, in protecting the rights of the downtrodden, punishing wickedness and cruelty and criminality and violations of other people's rights. The mighty and rich and powerful can't just go down and extinguish the lives and the rights and the destiny of the little people, right? They're not. Everyone's vote, everyone's rights are protected and matter here. That's what has changed. That simple linchpin, so diametrically opposed to Europe and everything that the world has had to offer, this protection and this inspired declaration of human rights to life and liberty are so centered in the idea of God's love, his biblical love for people, that you can't separate the two things. You can't arrive at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence and all of our founding documents. You can't arrive at them unless you have studied the Word of God and all kinds of other philosophies, all kinds of other modes of governance around the world, without studying the Roman Empire and the Greeks, and without being learned, scholared, advanced, hyper-intelligent academics. And that's what our forefathers were. And we have that blessed. We have to thank God every day that we have been given this chance. We have to fight for it, and we have to recognize it, and we have to push forward the evidence. And the evidence of America's greatness is that we have been a part of an experiment that has liberated our women and our female species in this country to such a degree that they're now able to achieve more than anyone ever imagined.
Tax hikes in the form of tariffs.
Not
and
true.
I'm curious
He's not doing
why
that.
he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have.
They
don't get charged on foreign companies, they get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press. Mary, go ahead.
And so the future is going to look like this. This is a revelation of what the future is going to look like. The future is going to be a place where the empowerment and the equalization of men and women is going to get to a new level of human evolution that's just been previously impossible to even comprehend. The presumption of human slavery, the presumption of the idea that people with dark skin, with dark melanin in their skin, were somehow a lesser slave class of people, right? Even in the 1850s, the Mormons ensconced this racist idea in their Book of Mormon that black people were deformed and lesser, and then white people were like angelic cherubs and blessed by God, and black people were cursed, right? It's right in the Book of Mormon. This is like the distillation of everything that the old world insanity and pseudoscience ever had to offer. The idea that women should just stay in the kitchen and bake me a cake. Labor in the kitchen all your life. That's your role, right? That's just a lie. That's a lie. Those are the lies of the old world that we have to strip away, because now we have to recognize that women are going to be the element and the key ingredient of our advancement to give us the edge and give America the supremacy and the social, economic, and international hegemony around the world that comes out of this cultural and societal advancement. And we're affecting the rest of the world. The rest of the world has to keep pace with us. Saudi Arabia has to let women drive. Saudi Arabia has to produce some female scientists so they don't look like they're a bunch of degenerates, right? They don't look like they're a bunch of cavemen. China has to put women out in the front and show that they're like a advanced society too, and they have smart women too, right? Nothing like us. Nothing that any of them have is anything like us. Even Russia. Russia's like an old boy, like kind of toxic patriarchal society where, just the men swing down hard and they rule, and women they just get in the back and quiet down, right? They haven't advanced. They haven't had the eureka, reformation, transformational change that allows them to recognize that the key ingredient to your success is all these untapped resources that you spend more time culturally retarding and holding back and keeping pinned down under ancient traditions of generational ineptitude. And because they have not been able to advance, they have not had this enlightenment, then they're going to have a whole segment, an entire massive portion of their society that's never going to be able to advance to their true potential. Incredibly intelligent women who are never going to be able to, even if they go into the sciences or even into chemistry or even into engineering, they're never going to be able to be freed and unshackled in their own mind and by their surrounding cultural mores, which hold them back. Now, we need to incentivize, we need to rip those chains within the imagination and the conscience of the people and break them away, so that women can view themselves differently. And that's what's been tragic in America recently. It's just been this attack on women by putting men, degenerate, like perverted, mentally ill men, in women's sports. It's just been such a horrible and toxic, venomous attack on the female culture of excellence that America produces. And for women anywhere to just go along with that and just support it, and for female governors who've achieved this place of greatness where they're governors over their state, right? They're attorneys general. They're all the things that only men could be before, and now you're jamming these sick dudes into women's sports and ruining their fucking professional athletic careers. I mean, this is so sick. It's so perverted. It's like a cultural, government sanctioned psychological rape of they have to sit there, like, of all the women together, they have to all sit there and take it. They all got to sit there quietly and let old Billy come in and run faster than us around the track and humiliate it. Just the humiliation ritual alone for women is just awful. But it's another opportunity to break through. It represents another challenge for women that they can advance, right? So break through, advance, smash this idiocy. And so that's why we have to prize now Karoline Leavitt is really the ultimate example and the ultimate hardcore pipe hitter that gets up every day and smashes this press and is ultimately changing the press. It's ultimately changing the trajectory and the shape and the direction of their questioning, because they got to get up and contend with her. They got to say something that has some kind of semblance of intelligence, right? So without any further ado, I said all that stuff. Let's put in here a clip by Karoline Leavitt to just introduce our elite journalist. And this woman is definitely leading America's intelligentsia.
In this briefing room, speaking to the American public, do you view yourself and your role as advocating on behalf of the president, or providing the unvarnished truth that is, not to lie, not to obfuscate, to the American people?
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. That is my job. And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people. And that's exactly what this administration is doing. It's correcting the lies and the wrongs of the past 4 years, many of the lies that have been told to your faces in this very briefing room. I will not do that. But since you brought up Truth Seek, I would like to point out, while I vowed to provide the truth from this podium, we ask that all of you in this room hold yourselves to that same standard. We know for a fact there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. We will call you out when we feel that your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House. So yes, I will hold myself to the truth, and I expect everyone in this room to do the same.
That's right, this is another exciting word from our awesome sponsor, wendyslimited.com. wendyslimited.com is the hottest new styles and designer labels in the fashion industry. You gotta go check out wendyslimited.com. And of course, Wendy's Boutique Limited is not sucked into all the venal brainwash of the leftist political culture out there. We know what a woman is, and we're here to serve women. We're not here to be deceived by all the fake-looking dudes out there, but dressed like women, no offense. And we are here to remind you that wendyslimited.com is a leader in online boutique couture trends with Wendy's Limited catalog selection, awesome designer apparel, and fine jewelry. You gotta check out wendyslimited.com. And our sponsor has been very generous to us and keeps us going here. Please come and check out the online obsession, wendyslimited.com, wendyslimited.com.
The president looks forward to embarking on his historic return to the Middle East, visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates next week, where he will focus on strengthening ties between our nations. 8 years ago, President Trump's first trip was to this same region of the world, where he introduced his bold peace through strength foreign policy strategy. On that trip, the president laid out his goal of eradicating terrorism and extremism in the region, which he successfully accomplished over the course of his administration with the total defeat of ISIS and the historic signing of the Abraham Accords. Now, 8 years later, President Trump will return to re-emphasize his continued vision for a proud, prosperous, and successful Middle East, where the United States and Middle Eastern nations are in cooperative relationships, and where extremism is defeated in place of commerce and cultural exchanges. This trip ultimately highlights how we stand on the brink of the golden age for both America and the Middle East, united by a shared vision of stability, opportunity, and mutual respect. The president greatly looks forward to visiting with our brave men and women in uniform at our U.S. Air Base in Qatar throughout this trip. Yesterday, President Trump demonstrated the art of the deal and secured a historic trade agreement, despite all of the naysayers who said no deals were coming. That, of course, turned out to be untrue. On the 80th anniversary of Victory Day for World War II, President Trump announced a great deal that provides American companies unprecedented access to the UK markets while bolstering U.S. national security. This trade deal will massively expand U.S. market access in the United Kingdom, creating a $5 billion opportunity for new exports for U.S. farmers, ranchers, and producers. This includes more than $700 billion in ethanol exports and $250 million in other agricultural products like good old American beef. The deal commits the United States and United Kingdom to work together to enhance industrial and agricultural market access and strengthens American competitiveness. Importantly, the deal also ensures streamlined customs procedures for U.S. exports. The UK will also be purchasing $10 billion of American-made Boeing planes as part of the deal. A trade agreement like this between the United States and the United Kingdom was being worked on for many years, but continued to prove elusive. But because of President Trump's bold negotiating approach, he got it done. All of this happened because of President Trump's implementation of powerful tariffs to end the era of economic surrender and rebalance America's trading agreements. American workers and companies are the best in the world, and they finally have a president who has their backs, fights for them, and delivers good deals that puts them first. This is just the first of many trade deals to come.
So that killer clip of the White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, right? She was always hardcore in the background, right? She was always there as a young woman, epitomizing the essence of what it is to be an American, right? Only in America, only through this evolution of American consciousness that allows people to kind of graduate through these levels of empathy and consciousness. And it really is the truth of the Judeo-Christian gospel, biblical ethic, working fundamentally through the lives and the hearts and the minds of people who make up the society. So people, with various degrees of understanding, various levels of faith and historical knowledge about these issues regarding the Jewish scriptures, which lead to the Jewish Messiah, which leads to the formation of Christianity, which reforms and reorders the entire world. So individuals like Karoline Leavitt understand deeply within the roots and the sinews of their being that murdering someone is wrong. It says it right there in the Ten Commandments: "Thou shalt not kill." Right? "Thou shalt not lie." You shall not steal. You shall not. Right? These fundamentals of moral human behavior are set up to govern our conscience, so that we are going to form a successful human endeavor in the venture of our society, being a highly organized effort of integrity and highly refined moral character. Causes our entire society, even though we have very many fewer people, right? We don't have a 1.2 billion people like in China, but we don't need 1.2 billion people. We just need high quality, high energy, highly motivated, highly moral individuals to conduct commerce and business in this country with each other in a fair way, and then we instantly become the world standard. Other nations cannot find the inward social skeletal structure of decency and honor that underpins the moral fabric of the entire society in this nation. And these kind of biblical, Jewish, and Christian moral standards that we have arising out of the texts and out of this relationship that God has had with his people, that has been a historical legacy passed down through time. So we know how God interacted with King David and how God interacted with King Solomon, and what his thoughts were towards his people that were living in this moral and honest and highly virtuous conduct within their lifestyle that caused that goodness and wholesomeness and wellness and wealth and energy to be an inspirational national energy to drive the people of God's nations forward to high levels of innovation and technological development. You got to understand that if you go back and look at history, during the age of Solomon, Solomon's empire, Solomon's kingdom was so great that it represented the state of the art of world empire at the time. In there, we have these incredible, terrific periods of imperial conquest. We had the Phoenicians and the Assyrians. Eventually, we had the Babylonians and the Persians. But in there, amongst that history, for quite a long time, all the known nations of the world would send their wood and their high quality products and their gold and their silver into Israel, into Jerusalem, into Solomon. Right? Solomon built the most successful and interconnected system of empire the world had ever seen. And he did it without conquest. Even his soldiers were carrying around shields plated with pure gold. Right? Even his military assets, right, were all decked out in gold. Solomon, and he did it by and large without some kind of extreme level of conquest or capturing or enslaving people and sending them all around the world. That's what the Assyrians and the Babylonians did. They would capture other nations and other peoples, bring them into slavery, and send them to far parts of the world across the globe, 3,000 miles away, never to return. That's what the Babylonians did. That's what they did, tried to create all these little fiefdoms and satraps, right? All these little satrapy little subordinate kingdoms that would pay tribute or be destroyed. Well, Solomon had set up the same kind of world kingdom and developed some of the most impressive wealth. He had so many princesses, and it wasn't just a matter of wives. It was a matter of marrying the princesses of other sovereign dominions and other kingdoms and creating noble lines, royal lineages were coming out of the greatness of Solomon. Even the Queen of Egypt traveled to see him. That's the truth of the history that was being recorded and being laid out in the biblical context for us. And these stories and these foundational truths and these elements of history show that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has always been established and set his standards and his will against the false gods of the Babylonians and the Egyptians. They worship the sun and worship Mars and worship Jupiter and worship whatever they could see in the sky, whatever visible celestial satellite would come and move across the sky every night. They would worship that as a god, right? They would make idols of gold and stone and silver or wood or whatever, right? And they worship. They get down on their face and worship these false idols. Do you think any kind of moral character and the power of personal integrity and greatness can arise out of worshiping a rock and a stump by getting down and ignoring the truth of the reality of the visible and present almighty omnipotent God who chose to make the world and the nations jealous by going to spend his time and to spend his recreational hours, right? Spend his energy and his wisdom and his prophetic insight, right? He would give those keys of the essential true nature of divinity and the keys to opening the future and seeing the future clearly, which was what the prophets of Israel had done and have done. You can see it written there. You go read it. And then all these people out here are just obsessed with taking shots from Dr. Fauci, right? They'll do anything. You people out there, you're so depraved. You'll do anything to ruin and destroy your own life, but you'll do nothing to discover and find the truth of the matter that's laid out. It's been laid out. It's been published. It's been written. The truth of God's word are histories of the men and women who he interacted with, who had dreams, who had visions, who had the revelations from the deep spirit of God. And they wrote them down. And if you go read them, you'll be uploaded with that information. You'll be updated with the code, right? The code and the transformational digital structures of that information, just like when you upload data into your computer or you upload an anti-inflammatory drug into your system and it helps to knock out a virus, right? It's the same kind of upload. Informational, digital, structural, mechanical, just like when you get genetic information from your parents and your mom has green eyes and then you have green eyes, right? The pattern of the outcome of your genetic structure, which begins in a genetic formation of your genotype and it unfolds outwardly 1 trillion times until you become a baby in your mother's belly. And then your phenotype has all the characteristics that were programmed into the structure of the cell in your genotype, right? That's why you have your green eyes characteristic from your mother. It's the same thing. It's the same informational upload that happens when you go read the truth of the Bible. The information changes and alters your mind and your heart and the way that you're seeing the world. Information updates, alters, and changes reality. Makes it more refined, more accurate. Just like if you were in a case and you were in a jury and you had to look at the suspect and you got to decide whether you're going to destroy this person's life and send him away forever to prison. And you got to find some kind of evidence that shows the truth of what happened, of what the situation is. And then somebody brings out a videotape, right? Surprise evidence introduced in the trial. You see the videotape, no one knew about it, then you can see the suspect. You can see him walk over, you can see him do the thing that he said he didn't do, right? You can see the guilt. So now you're updated. The information has altered and updated and upgraded the way you're looking at the situation, diminishes the shadow of uncertainty, and brings clarity in the information of reality that you're taking in. That's what this is all about. If you don't have a structural, informational conception of what is happening and what God has laid out, your creator, where you came from, your source, where you're going back to when you end, that creator laid out in this world all the information that you're ever going to need to know so that you can trust that the God of creation is telling you the truth. The God of creation is laying out his word and his history and the actual fact of the case of what happened in a digital, structural, literary form that's being passed down from generation to generation. And he made it his people, his Jews, his Jewish nation, which is the last of the 12 tribes, right? We had Reuben, Gad, Issachar, Benjamin, right? We had all the 12 tribes, and now we don't, right? They're in the, they've been carried away. They're in the providence of God now. But the people of Judah, the children of that Israelite Sion, the children of Judah, the Jews, right? They lived in Jerusalem, and they weren't taken away in captivity. They weren't defeated by the Assyrians, and they remained in the land, and they were the only ones to remain. And that's how we have the Jews today. We would have many other Israelites, many other Israelite families and tribes and lineages, but they were taken away. And that's the truth of history. These are the facts of reality that people are spending their time, the precious time of their own existence, just ignoring and not contemplating the truth of the fundamental underlying certainty of reality. And so we got to just make these arguments on this show. We got to push forward for the basis of why these people who are so reprobate, so ill-informed, so emotionally committed to seeing their errant and delusional political standards somehow win out and accomplish their goals, right? They want the whole world to be transgendered, right? They want to go into the embassies in Iran and in Somalia and everywhere in the world and put up, homosexual gay flags, because that's their values. They want everyone to have their values, right?
Let's act like adults here. They are generously offering their time to answer your questions. You don't need to scream at them like a bunch of school children. My advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now.
Numbers, how many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter, you should find out.
That team prayer before is just a moment to be silent and still and ask God for confidence and the ability to articulate my words, knowledge, prayer, protection. And it is a nice moment to reset. It's the last thing I do before I go out there, and then it just gives me the confidence.
Add one more point. We are not going to be lectured about national security and American troops by Democrats and the mainstream media who turned the other cheek when the Biden administration, because of their incompetence, left 13 service members dead in Afghanistan, and not a single person in the previous administration was held accountable for that botched withdrawal. Joe Biden said, in fact, it was a great operation. That is despicable. It's unacceptable to this president and this Secretary of Defense. The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this inadvertent number being added to the messaging thread. But above all, we take the lives of our troops, safety, security, prosperity around the globe with the utmost seriousness.
They can't comprehend a world where people don't want their values, where their values are devaluation and perversion, and there are no real values at all. And so they can't, they're like rapists, right? They can't take no for an answer. They've got to make your kids understand transgender butt plugs at the school when they're 6. And they're going to rape it onto them. They're not going to accept no as an answer, guys. They're not. They're not going to accept the answer that your perverted lifestyle is making the whole world sick. And these Muslim extremists over here, they want to suicide bomb you because you're sick. They're sick too. They're trying to murder you, but they're trying to murder you specifically because they don't want your depraved and sick culture affecting them. We're just all holding our nose, but they're they're incensed. They're going to come kill you. Right? So if you're not ready to die to be a transgender, to fight Islam and to fight the whole world, to establish your extremist, perverted, pedophile cause to kids or whatever, right? When you're a transgender pedophile, I mean, we're way past homosexual, right? Now you just self-sexual, masturbatory, transvestite, culture rapist, right? Because you're gonna push and rape your culture onto us, whether we want it or not, right? We can't say no. We don't prefer that. That isn't our thing. That's not our bag, baby. That's not our particular kink, right? So kick rocks down the road. Get a right. No, they're gonna find a way to pin your kid in the classroom, an innocent, open-minded, open-hearted kid, ready to learn, malleable, easily influenced kids, right? Taking the what these adults say is a matter of fact, and quietly molesting them in the background of the classroom with this perverse knowledge, right? That's how you ultimately pervert or debauch kids. You don't necessarily touch them right away with your hands, right? When these pedophile students and teachers and groomers, but they want to inculcate this idea in their mind first. It's all based on sexuality, how to look at sexuality, how to look at men and women, or maybe they're confused and twisted up. Maybe you're looking at a woman, but it's a man. Like, how do you really know? How do adults have anal sex with each other? That's all they want to teach these kids. They want to debauch them, pervert them, and sicken them deep in their heart, stricken them deep in their soul before you have a chance to take away the poison, before you have the chance to, right? Once you, it's like a flasher on the subway, right? He's standing there with his big trench coat on, and he flashes. He shows the little girl the dong, right? Right? And then you can't unsee it. You're like, what the hell was that? That guy had like a fifth arm growing out. What this disgusting, right? Once you kind of get disgusted by that and sickened by that and turned off by that at the wrong time in your life, maybe when you're older as a woman, maybe that same situation is arousing because now you're a mature woman. Now you're interested in having an interaction like that with a man. Maybe not in the subway, but privately. You're ready for mature discussions, mature reality, right? Graphic reality, you're ready for it. But when you're a kid, you're not ready for that. That's why we all wearing our pants. These people want to take the pants off. That was the very first thing that God did when we were naked and we were ashamed, is he covered us. Thank you, Lord. But now they want to uncover us, right? They want to bring back the shame and the confusion and the sickness of not being able to properly interact with adults in the adult world. So they got to take their weird, confusing, disgusting, perverted sex party over to the kids who don't have the power to say no. This is gross. Like you're doing something to me that shouldn't be done. You're violating me. You're taking advantage of me. Get away from me with it, right? That's what adults would do. That's what people who knew what was going on. The kids didn't know what's going on. They're being attacked. It's like a ideological rapist. That's what this is about, guys. They're ideologically raping your kids in the class with these ideas. They're making it seem like, turning them into New World Order, United Nations perverts like them. That's what they want to raise your kids. They want to see your kids grow up to be perverts. A lot of you are. You're watching them pervert your kids in the classroom. They're coming home every day, a little bit more queer every time. They don't want the values you have to share with them that your parents passed on to you. They just want to care about the things that they're spending 8 hours a day with these teachers, guys. You're never going to be able to compete. Never. So this culture war, we're reacting to it. I mean, it's like reactionary, Republican, like flailing back wildly, trying to cover my kids' eyes from the sickness. It's too late. They got them. They got them on the various different levels of media infiltration, right? On YouTube or everywhere. Every culture, every kids thing, every Teletubby, kids, Blue's Clues, right? You can't trust any of it, guys. Casually, subtly, on the low, in the background, they're perverting your kids with this. They're bringing this idea out that the parents are messed up and they're trying to keep you from having fun, right, kids? Your parents, right? It's this kind of red guard, red revolutionary guard, CCP move, right? Turn the kids against the parents. And only kids are dumb enough to go for that, right? Only kids, you could teach kids anything, to do anything, and they'll learn and they'll accept it and then they'll believe you. That's why you have these kids who are being transgendered out. You have the trans exit movement because by the time they're 25, they've castrated themselves. The genital spot between their legs, it's numb. They can't feel anything, right? They're never going to have a sexual orgasm or a sexual pleasure again. Wasn't that the whole idea? Switch your gender and be your real self and have really fulfilling sex in the real way against what God messed up. God messed up nature, but now we can fix it and you can have a fulfilling life. No, you're not having a fulfilling life. They're scraping that shit off there. They're scraping all the nerves off. That's what you're getting. You're getting scraped, right? And you have to be really demented, really delusional, really sick to go along with that. Even when you're like 16, 17, 18, they're prepping you for it. You're like, yeah, I'm taking all the meds, and as soon as I'm able, I'm going to run away from my parents' house and do what they tell me not to do. That always works out good, right? So, guys, we're not willing to defend our next generation. We're not going to have one. We don't have one now. Did you have a kid recently? How about you, Karoline Leavitt? Go have some kids. We all saw your husband. Like, you guys see this guy? Karoline Leavitt's husband is like, got to be the most in love husband in the world. Like, I mean, I got to step up my game. I got to get my wife some flowers. I got to, like, this guy done swept her off her feet, right? And it's so amazing to see. It's so wonderful to see that, to see people happy, to see, ooh, it feels good, right? It feels good to get back to real human, warm, human, juicy nature. Oh, I love it, right? So Karoline Leavitt's kids, I can't wait. We're going to say take some pictures. We need more kids. All right, Jack Posobiec, are you guys going to have another son? What are you waiting for? You wanted me to send you a signal? Here it is. Have more kids, guys. Because we're not going to have another generation. They're not having any kids. They can't reproduce. They can't seem to line the, right? They can't line it up. They can't get the thing in the thing. They can't do it. It's not happening. They're not having any kids, guys. So in order not to have a totally degenerated and perverse generation of Marxist losers and suicidal misfits who are trying to basically kill off our country as their like highest moral duty, you have to have kids. You do. You have to go ahead and just keep going. And it's a lot. It's asking a lot, right? It is. But it's not too much for your country, guys, and for the future. So here, let's go on. I'm going on and on here. But I'm so excited about Karoline Leavitt. She's really the epitome, the quintessential essence of everything we've been doing on this particular chapter of our podcast. Elite journalists, women leading America's intelligentsia.
Garrett.
I have one other question, but I want to follow up on Katie's question, actually. You said the mass deportation campaign would continue, but she asked about the flights specifically. Will those flights to El Salvador continue while this case is being appealed?
We don't have any flights planned specifically, but we will continue with the mass deportations. And I would just like to point out that the judge in this case is essentially trying to say that the president doesn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our American soil. That is an egregious abuse of the bench. This judge does not have that authority. It is the opinion of this White House and of this administration, and that's why we're fighting this in court. And it's very, very clear that this is an activist judge who is trying to usurp the president's authority. Under the Alien Enemies Act, the president has this power, and that's why this deportation campaign has continued. And this judge, Judge Boasberg, is a Democrat activist. He was appointed by Barack Obama. His wife has donated more than $10,000 to Democrats, and he has consistently shown his disdain for this president and his policies, and it's unacceptable.
Go about the idea that these people are all foreign terrorists, but Judge Boasberg was originally appointed by George W. Bush and then elevated by Barack Obama. I just feel like I should clear that up.
Well, let me just say something to that effect, Garrett. 67% of all of the injunctions in this century have come against which president? Donald J. Trump. Let me say that again. 60% of the injunctions by partisan activists in the judicial branch have come against President Donald Trump, and 92% of those have been from Democrat-appointed judges. This is a clear, concerted effort by leftists who don't like this president and are trying to impose or slow down his agenda.
So, given that, do you think it's a good use of Congress's time and the president's political capital to try to impeach and remove a federal judge, which would take 67 votes you're unlikely to get in the Senate?
Well, look, the president has made it clear that he believes this judge in this case should be impeached. And he has also made it clear that he has great respect for the Chief Justice John Roberts. And it's incumbent upon the Supreme Court to rein in these activist judges. These partisan activists are undermining the judicial branch by doing so. We have co-equal branches of government for a reason, and the president feels...
Here's just a quick reminder, guys, of our sponsor, wendyslimited.com. wendyslimited.com has all the hottest new styles, all the most incredible boutique fashion designers available to you. And of course, we're all American, and we're all about making America great again at wendyslimited.com, guys. wendyslimited.com. So with this outline, we can really deftly highlight the character and the persona and the gravitas of Karoline Leavitt. What a role model, right? What a hero. What a really credible spokeswoman to have at the head of the government. So can you imagine all the kids in classrooms across America, or even across the world, right? Get to, perhaps even as adults, we don't always glean all the nuance and all the subtle underpinnings of the various dialogue that's happening in the press room, but we appreciate the friction that we can observe that she is hammering away and pushing back in every respect. I love when she says, no, that is not true, that is incorrect, that's false. And that's basically what she spends most of her time doing. That's why we appreciate her. That's why we applaud her so greatly. And no one wants to point out that this woman is basically like a freaking supermodel, right? Am I missing something here? I mean, let me check again here. Oh yeah, and then it's so funny because they go off and they're all upset and perturbed and sickened because she's at work with her baby. She has this beautiful, healthy little baby, and and there she is working, and they're like, oh, it's so messed up that she's working with her child. It's like, am I in a Twilight Zone? Like, I feel like I fell through like a sewer hole and I went into another dimension. I'm like waiting for the Ninja Turtles to pop out or something. Like, what is going on here, right? And and so this is what we're doing, guys. We're like, this is what is so amazing about this era that we're in, because Karoline Leavitt is such an incredibly awesome heavyweight. And because she's such an incredibly obvious, super huge winner that would just take that position. And then when you put her up against the other kind of people they've had in that role recently, they're just like these low grade, like, what was it, like Psaki, like the low grade, like Antifa henchmen. I imagine like she's like one of the chicks that hangs out, like the one weird Antifa chick among the 10 dudes, and they're all masked up. You don't know who they are, but there's that one girl who's like, yeah, down with the patriarchy. You're like, wait, that one Antifa dude is a chick, and that's like Jennifer Psaki, right? That's who she is. She's just a jackass. And then she's looking like, man, she's in whatever like adrenochrome that the other guys are taking. They keep on looking young. She's not getting any. Right, and so that's too bad for her. And then you have the other one, the Jean Pierre lady. Her hair was like very natural. Like she didn't like she isn't like the Crockett, the Representative Crockett lady over there who humiliates herself on a regular basis by talking and trying to communicate out loud. And she's like, she always has the fake European hair weave, right? So she has like the plait and like underneath her like real natural, beautiful African hair, which we recently had to have legislation. We had to have legislation to approve that people who have beautiful natural, plaited African hair shouldn't be discriminated against. And I agree with that. I don't know if anyone was discriminating against that, but that we shouldn't do that. And Jasmine Crockett should be allowed to come out with her own like heritage, a hairdo, like Ilhan Omar has, right? So she shouldn't have to like have the fake, the white girl, the black white girl perm weave on her head, right? Which is really unfair because of how they rip on, colonial white people, right? They can't be German, Irish, Dutch, extraction, heritage people with like a legitimate background from somewhere, right? They're just white people. Like that's how they can discriminate against you and make you into like a reptilian genetic freak. It's like really just that's how they're trying to dismiss and degrade people with less melanin in their skin who might be from a European extraction, might be from the Netherlands or wherever, right? We migrated here long ago. We were Protestants, we were Reformers, we were Dutch and German Baptists and Lutherans, etc. And then now we just have to be whites, So they get to just castigate us all into this weird group, and we're not even like our backgrounds and our ethnicities and are not even the same, right? It's like just making all black people the same. It doesn't matter if they're like, maybe they have like ancestry of like an Aboriginal tribesman from Australia, like somebody who's has melanin content in their ethnicity from being from the Aborigines tribes, or what if you're just like from India? India's a big continent. They have a lot of different kind of like ethnic and tribal ancestries going on there. Some people from Africa have very dark melanin, very dark skin tone, complexion, right? And so then you have people from Ethiopia who are in Africa, like, and all these people come from all these individuals we are discussing come from very different parts of the world, 10,000 miles away from each other, have no genetic or ethnical ancestry or bloodline connection, right? But they have to all just be blacks, right? And so that's why the ignorance of this generation and the lack of precision, the lack of depth Like the shallow insolvency of their like pseudo-intellectual delusionalism, right? They're just like, you see these people like outside dressed in all different colors with their like queer Palestine signs, and like apparently they just can't read like the news, they can't read the Wall Street Journal, they just can't read history, they don't know what's going on. They're delusionalists, right? They're locked into their delusion, they're LARPing their weird delusional role, and they just want us all to accept or somehow comprehend even like their incoherent and stagnant degeneracy, like the state of like free fall that they're in. Like they need, like, back in the day when I was a kid, we used to watch, like Porky the Pig, and we would watch the Roadrunner, and whenever we had these kind of individuals, like there would always be like this little white van would pull up, and you would snatch them up, right, and you would take them away into the loony bin, right, the loony bin, or whatever happened to the loony bin. Like these people, they should be in the loony bin. They are not able to participate and function in society. They need help. Let's get them some help, guys. But already I've taken too much like light of our attention away from the real reason for us all being here today, which is really just Karoline Leavitt. And there is no other reason to be here today, right, and to participate in this podcast, because she's bringing so much like hard-hitting, like hot lead on target. It's crazy, right? And I'm like, it's mind-blowing. And so she is really the kind of grand archetype and phenomenalistic persona that we want to like project onto our kids. We want our kids like writing letters to the White House press secretary, like, and right, like when you were a kid, you would write a letter to the White House, like that. We want the tours, like when they come in, we want them to see or be around individuals like Karoline Leavitt with that stature. We want the media to have that dumbfounded, like perturbed look on their face, like they just ate some bad caviar or something, right? And you can't cough it up. It's too late, because you're already in the press room and you're already having to like somehow make sense out of your own reason for being, because Palestine is really an important issue that America should be focusing on, right, guys? So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with this process of like deglobalizing the world by making America's national interests. Let's let the thing be the thing. Let's let America's national interests be America's own national interests. Let's keep that focused on what we have, what America has to offer. What America has to offer is a whole generation of bombshell elite journalists set to bring forward a new generation of women who are going to lead America's intelligentsia and have the greatest influence on around the world. Because it's not just about here. It's not about all the confused and like privileged and spoiled and like rotten little pedantic like goldfish dwellers. That's what you have. These people, they're just like goldfish dwellers. They live inside their little cloistered, little like hyper-lensed, secured little environment with their little food nuggets fed to them daily, right? And they pass judgment on the rest of the world. They try to tell us, right? They're trying to like passively guilt trip the rest of the world and America and Western civilization because of the plights of the poor and downtrodden around the world, right? And of course, they're so concerned about Ukraine's border. These people were hysterical about Ukraine's border, and they don't care about like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans dying by fentanyl. They don't talk about it. They don't bring it up. Or they don't care about little girls being beaten to death with bats and machetes by MS-13 gangs because they tried to go to school and were out of their parents' sight for 5 minutes, right? They don't ask questions about any of those issues because they don't care. Because they're heartless, soulless, depraved media pigs. And they're only there to try to like enact the propagandistic worldview and Marxian narrative that the rest of them and their little Ivy League classmates are trying to foist on the rest of the American people. And everyone's so sick of the media, right? Everyone's like, if we have to have some kind of like, in my opinion, Jacobin revolt, and then there have to be like some kind of like, like offering of some kind of American sacrifice to this chopping block that is hypothetical. I think that the American media, all those people out there that have been just breathless and hyperbolic and trying to convince us of this insanity, and knowingly trying to steer the American people like lemmings over the cliff of our own doom, of our own like, trying to always push the American people into believing absurdities that will lead the American people into like the Cloward and Piven's strangulation hold of banking insolvency, right? They're trying to push America in every level that they can with whatever tiny little minuscule pathetic influence they have over the edge and over the cliff towards this idea of like self-loathing and doomsaying about America's role in the world, right? It's always this provocative World Economic Forum, United Nations jargon, narrative that they put up in the pedestal. They sit up there in their weird meetings with a blue background, and they're worshipped like deities from on Mount Olympus, from on high, right? We're supposed to give a crap. We're supposed to give a damn what these people think as they poo-poo on the rest of the world and tell us that we're going to eat bugs and all, right? America is sick to death of these people. It's time for us to let them know. It's time for us to stop taking it. It's time for us to recognize now is the moment of our greatest opportunity in American history, which is very brief, I might add. There have been very few opportunities like this for Americans and patriots to forge a moral imperative for future generations and to etch into history these eternal values that we are trying to pass on to our future generations. And it's obvious that these Marxist reprobates and these pedophile university degenerates who are just incapable of reproducing their own children, but they're just constantly after our kids, are trying to change and cut off and deviate America's national history and our values and the moral character of our country for future generations. And we just cannot allow that to be. We cannot allow that story that they're laying down to be what's told to our future generations and to our kids. Like, we have to annihilate and erase those sickening and debased devalues, right? The devaluation by sexual violence and sexual debauchery that they're trying to introduce into our kids. They're not values, right? It's the process of demoralization and demoralizing the classroom that they're trying to achieve. And so we really did go pretty hard in this episode, guys. We're just going to close out with a little bit more of our heroine and our champion here at the White House, who we love to see every day. We love to see images of her with her child at work, working hard. Someday that child will grow up and look and see himself with his beautiful mommy in the White House. And just right, that's the big historical generational circuit that we need to complete. Someday, if we live long enough, we'll see that child grown up, having to contemplate the image of himself and who he is in the future, a future Leavitt, little Karoline Leavitt, right? And so we celebrate her and we promote her and we look forward to just having her as a champion going forward in America. And we got to go back and we have to just point out that in the American Revolution, we had early women leaders like Betsy Ross. I mean, Betsy Ross was putting together that flag for her husband. Do we have the ability to comprehend what was at stake for these people? And they were together. They were together as a Christian, married, godly, Protestant couple. And they were there to stitch together the future of American values and the hopes and dreams that they worked with their fingers and their hands and died for and bled for and worked so hard for is now in our hands. We're now the living intonation and manifestation of everything that they tried hard to bring into being. And so for those individuals who imagine a world where women were going to take a central role, a leading role in putting together the national ethic and the solemn patriotic obligations of citizenship. And so even at this early stage of the revolution, American women knew what liberty and what independence and what political sovereignty and national hegemony and independence and liberty from Rome and from Europe would be. And so American conservatism and patriotism, the values of the Christian Reformation movement and the Protestant biblical values of those church groups that rose out of those convictions, and that move of the Holy Spirit upon people in those generations who formed their own little churches, or Methodists and Baptists and Presbyterians in different times and places and different cultural diversity and languages, right, depending on where you are. Lutherans in Germany and Calvinists in France and Hussians up there and early in England, getting the Reformation kicked off before anyone knew what happened. People were incensed. People were disgusted by the destruction of human life and the burning and the morbid dismembering of these champions and scholars of the Word of God, great Christian giants being treated so horribly and mercilessly by the wicked forces of the Antichrist of Rome, right? And that's what really kicked off the Reformation. That's what Martin Luther was so upset about 100 years later, guys. So we'll talk about that more in future episodes, but let's take a minute to peer and with wonder at what the Western civilization and the great and wonderful Protestant Reformation values that birthed America have wrought in this generation. That would be in the person of Karoline Leavitt, no doubt.
Get ready for more historic deals in our country to boom like never before. On that note, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Ambassador Jameson Greer will meet with the lead representatives on economic matters from the People's Republic of China over the weekend in Switzerland. As President Trump has said, the United States and China have been talking for some time over the course of the administration, and now teams from both countries will meet in person to continue discussions. You can be certain that President Trump and his trade team will ensure we work to achieve the best deal possible for America. In other news, the Trump administration just announced a new incentive for illegal aliens living in the United States to self-deport. Eligible illegal aliens who now use the CBP Home app to self-deport will receive a clear, safe way to leave the United States. Their plane tickets home may be paid for, and they will receive a $1,000 stipend once we have confirmation that they have left our country. This new feature will allow illegal aliens to have a planned departure out of the country and to leave as soon as possible in a dignified way. If illegal aliens make the right decision here and submit their intent to depart through the CBP Home app and pass extensive vetting, they will be temporarily deprioritized for ICE detention and enforcement action before their scheduled departure. And leaving voluntarily in this matter may improve their legal immigration options in the future. This initiative will also save massive amounts of money for American taxpayers. Voluntary departures are much more cost-effective than traditional removals. By deploying the CBP Home app in this new way, President Trump is aiming to reduce the need for costly arrests, detentions, and court proceedings. Currently, the average cost of traditional removal is more than $17,000 per illegal alien. Our projections estimate that the use of the CBP Home app will massively reduce that financial burden by approximately 70%, so taxpayer dollars can be redirected and our brave immigration law enforcement officers can focus on removing the most violent illegal aliens hiding in our communities. Finally, it was announced this morning that First Lady Melania Trump secured a $25 million investment in President Trump's budget to provide housing and support for youth transitioning out of foster care. And in recognition of the 7th anniversary of Mrs. Trump's Be Best initiative, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development allocated funds toward the agency Foster Youth to Independence program. Yesterday, Mrs. Trump hosted a special celebration of military mothers with the president, bringing together 150 military moms from around the country to recognize their service, not just in their home, but for our country. For those of you who were there at the events yesterday like I did, I have no doubt you will join me in recognizing how truly special those moments were. So let's get to questions. Here in our new media seat today is Andrew Egger, the White House correspondent for The Bulwark. The Bulwark is a new media company launched in 2019 with hundreds of thousands of readers on Substack and more than 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Andrew, please kick us off. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Caroline. The president posted another ad this week for his Trump meme coin. The group that's running that coin is encouraging people to buy in order to win a dinner this month with the president. Why is the president planning to attend a dinner for the top investors in his coin?
Look, the president is abiding by all conflict of interest laws. The president has been incredibly transparent with his own personal financial obligations throughout the years. The president is a successful businessman, and I think, frankly, it's one of the many reasons that people reelected him back to this office.
There are at least some people who are buying this coin who seem to view it as an opportunity to influence the president's views. There was a logistics company this week that said they would buy $20 million in the coin in order to advocate for free trade between the U.S. and Mexico. If buyers are buying for that reason, are they wasting their money?
Look, I can assure you the president acts with only the interests of the American public in mind, putting our country first and doing what's best for our country, full stop. That's his intention, and that's what he's focused on. Kristen, good to see you here today. Welcome back.
Caroline, thank you. Glad to be back. So on those China talks, what does President Trump expect to come out of those talks, and is he going to be disappointed if his team can't secure a deal?
Well, look, the president is very confident in his Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, and of course Ambassador Jameson Greer, who has played an instrumental role in all of these trade negotiations as well. I think yesterday's success, the announcement of a trade deal with the United Kingdom, is a great first step. Again, many said in this room it couldn't be done. Now we are moving forward with many other countries. We're talking to dozens of our trading partners around the world, but of course China is a major country, a major player in this space, and the president has said, and he's right, China needs the United States of America. They need our markets, they need our consumer base, and Secretary Bessent knows that he's going to Switzerland this weekend with the full support and confidence and trust of the president here at home.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Two questions. First, can you give us an update on U.S. efforts to mediate or have an impact on the conflict between India and Pakistan?
Sure, I absolutely can. This is something that the Secretary of State and, of course, now our National Security Advisor as well, Marco Rubio, has been very much involved in. The President has expressed he wants to see this de-escalate as quickly as possible. He understands these are two countries that have been at odds with one another for decades, long before President Trump was here in the Oval Office. However, he has good relationships with the leaders of both countries, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, I spoke to him just yesterday. He has been in constant communication with the leaders of both countries trying to bring this conflict to an end.
Just one other question. Yesterday, we saw the news of the new Pope. Before Pope Leo became Pope Leo, there were some critical comments that he made about President Trump and about Vice President Vance on his then X account. Does the White House have any reaction to those comments?
The President made his reaction to Pope Leo's announcement yesterday very clear. He is very proud to have an American Pope. I think it was a surprise to everyone. I saw the news media was surprised to report on that yesterday, but it's a great thing for the United States of America and for the world, and we are praying for him.
Thanks, Caroline. The President has been pretty firm on keeping these 145% tariffs in place on Chinese imports. Today, via Truth Social, he said that he'd be possibly open to lowering those to 80%. Why the change, and how did the President land on 80?
The President still remains with his position that he is not going to unilaterally bring down tariffs on China. We need to see concessions from them as well. And again, that's part of the reason that Secretary Bessent is going to talk to his Chinese counterparts this weekend to start those discussions in person. As for the 80% number, that was a number the President threw out there, and we'll see what happens this weekend. And always in the effort of transparency, I'm sure you'll hear directly from the Treasury Secretary or the President after those negotiations conclude. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. Why did the White House announce this deal with the UK before all of the details were finished?
That's not true, actually. I saw the fact sheet. I saw the deal as well before the President brought all of you in the Oval Office in the effort of transparency. You had the President and the Prime Minister on the phone talking to all of you directly about how this was a great deal, a phenomenal deal, and discussions will continue. But as I spoke to our Ambassador Greer yesterday, this is how trade deals work. You set an initial agreement, you set the framework, you set up the deal, and then of course, T's have to be crossed and I's have to be dotted. But this deal is a good deal, and the numbers are determined, and all of the market access that I just discussed will remain.
Does that mean that the 10% baseline is going to still be there at the end when all of the other details are ironed out?
The President is committed to the 10% baseline tariff, not just for the United Kingdom, but for his trade negotiations with all other countries as well.
Permanently, even after the deals are done, like that is going to remain?
The President is determined to continue with that 10% baseline tariff. I just spoke to him about it earlier. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. I'd like to ask about New York and about a personnel matter. On New York, the mayor, Eric Adams, is here today. Could you tell us anything more about the visit, who initiated it, what they're talking about? And also, is there any comment from the White House on the air traffic control issues in Newark?
All I will say on Mayor Eric Adams is that he requested a meeting with the President, and the President was willing to take it. If the President wishes to discuss his private meeting afterwards, I will let him do that himself. Yes, I'm glad you asked about the FAA. There was a glitch in the system this morning, especially at Newark Airport. As you all know, I spoke to the Department of Transportation. That glitch was caused by the same telecoms and software issues that were raised last week. Everything went back online after the brief outage, and there was no operational impact. DOT and the FAA are working to address this technical issue tonight to prevent further outages, as well as install new fiber from Newark Airport to Philadelphia. And the goal is to have the totality of this work done by the end of the summer. I want to add that this outage at Newark Airport speaks to why the Secretary of Transportation yesterday made a massive announcement in investing in our aviation safety and our telecom system. There's a 4-part infrastructure plan that was released by the Secretary of Transportation yesterday to improve communication, surveillance, automation, and their facilities. They want to replace the antiquated telecom systems with new fiber, wireless, and satellite technologies, replace more than 600 radars, which have gone way past their life cycle, and address runway safety. They want to build 6 new air traffic control centers for the first time since the 1960s and replace towers as well. They want to implement new modern hardware and software for all traffic facilities to create a common platform system throughout the towers. These are much needed changes. This is a very bold plan by the Department of Transportation. I think it's unfortunate that the previous administration sat on their hands and did nothing, but how grateful we are that we have a Department of Transportation and a secretary and a president who's willing to take bold action and change.
The personnel matter, Caroline, could I ask?
Thanks, Caroline. Just going back to India, Pakistan, can we expect President Trump to get in touch personally with the leaders of those countries to try and de-escalate this situation?
If and when that happens, we will certainly let you know. Natalie.
Thanks, Caroline. Sure. I have a question about the Middle East trip. Will any of the president's family members, like including Don Jr., Eric, or Jared Kushner, be joining him on the trip?
I am not tracking any of the president's family members joining us at this time, but of course, the first family is welcome to come. I hope they would. They're great people, great to be around, but I'm not tracking them on the manifesto.
And given that you noted he is a successful businessman, do you know if the president has any plans to meet with any of the folks involved with any of the family businesses over there, or see any of the sites that are going to be
Not to my knowledge, and let me just get to the premise of your question that both of you have raised. I think it's frankly ridiculous that anyone in this room would even suggest that President Trump is doing anything for his own benefit. He left a life of luxury and a life of running a very successful real estate empire for public service, not just once, but twice. And again, the American public reelected him back to this White House because they trust he acts in the best interest of our country and putting the American public first. This is a president who has actually lost money for being president of the United States. I don't remember these same type of questions being asked of my predecessor about a career politician who was clearly profiting off of this office. That is not what President Trump does, and this White House holds ourselves to the highest of ethical standards. Phil.
Thank you. There's this Reuters report that the U.S. is in talks with Israel about an American-led post-war administration in Gaza. Is that accurate? Are these talks ongoing?
We are in constant communication and dialogue with our counterparts and our allies and friends in Israel. Ron Dermer was here at the White House yesterday meeting with members of President Trump's team. As for the situation in Gaza, the president and his entire national security team have made it very clear we want to see the hostages released from Gaza. That is a priority for this administration. As for what that looks like, and even moving beyond that, I'm not going to get into the details of plans that frankly may or may not have even been proposed, but I can emphasize what the president holds closest in his heart right now, and that's the release of all of the hostages in Gaza.
And then there's been some conservative pushback to some of these salt tax, the salt tax cap. For instance, Majority Leader Steve Scalise said that bringing back the state and local tax deduction would essentially mean, quote, 45 states are subsidizing 5 states that have very high taxes imposed by leftist governors. Is he wrong? Is it fair to ask red Indiana to bail out blue New York?
Well, look, this is an ongoing discussion on the Hill. There's a lot of disagreement on Capitol Hill right now about the salt tax proposal, and we will let them work it out. As for the tax provisions in the reconciliation bill, the priorities of this president, he has made them incredibly clear. No tax on tips for our hardworking service workers, no tax on Social Security for our well-deserving seniors who have worked their whole lives to pay into this system, no tax on overtime for hardworking Americans as well, and there's a plethora of other priorities the president wants to see in this bill. Anyone who opposes this bill will be opposing the largest tax cut in American history. They will be voting to raise taxes by the tune of $4 trillion on the middle class of this country, and we look forward to holding them accountable for that. Everyone on Capitol Hill on both sides of the aisle should be supportive of the president's tax priorities. Follow up on that? Go ahead.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, it's...
Sure. Go ahead, and then I'll go to your follow-up.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to follow up on the Truth Social post. So the president's saying 80% tariffs could come down. Just an announcement would be enough to lower those tariffs? Is that what he's looking for from the Chinese concessions?
That's not what the president said. He said that an 80% number may sound good to him, but again, he's in constant contact with our Secretary of Treasury, who will be leading these negotiations this weekend.
And historically, the Chinese have made the meeting itself a win. What does a win look like out of these meetings for the president this weekend?
A good deal for the American worker and the American people. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, back to the reconciliation bill. Can you just clarify the president's position, though, a little bit specifically on the tax issue? Because in his Truth Truth Social post, he said this morning that he would accept even a tiny tax increase for the rich, but then says Republicans probably shouldn't do it, but I'm okay if they do it. So what is it that he wants? Does he want them to increase the tax rates?
The president wants tax cuts, the largest tax cuts in history. He wants to extend his historic tax cuts from 2017, and he wants to see all of the other tax priorities that I just laid out for you included in this bill as well. As for the policy proposal you're talking about, the president has said he himself personally would not mind paying a little bit more to help the poor and the middle class and the working class in this country. I think, frankly, that's a very honorable position. But again, these negotiations are ongoing on Capitol Hill, and the president will weigh in when he feels necessary.
Encourage them to have a higher bracket for top earners.
The president has made his personal position on this matter clear.